Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast series. Please follow us at our YouTube channel, and all of these podcasts today will be available on YouTube channel, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on the website azurecentric.com. So for today, and for the things that we did on the previous podcasts, we were talking about the Azure Administrator Associate, the AZ-103 certification. So we are covering a lot of good stuff. This is a special Azure certification regarding the first Azure certification, that is the AZ-103. And today, what we have as a special guest is our good friend Andrew Lowe's. Hi, Andrew. How are you today?
I'm great, Marcos. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here again.
You're very welcome. I heard that you recently did this exam, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I did the AZ-103 a few months ago now, and we recently learned in March of 2020 here that Microsoft is changing some of the role definitions for their exams. So 103 will now become 104 with some slightly different requirements. So we'll address that in a little bit later on, I think, together. But really, essentially, the core of 103 is going to be the same in 104. There's lots of good information from Microsoft on what's going to change with those. And they're really essentially removing the duplication between some of their Azure certifications and refining them. So I think
Yeah,
it's a positive thing.
it is. It's a positive thing. And that's a very good segue for why it's so important right now, this certification. With the announcement that Microsoft is discontinuing the solution, not the system engineer and system administrator certifications, and moving towards to more a role like the solution architect or the Azure Administrator Associate. It's that change is driving all of this at the Microsoft certification world. And this is a
Absolutely.
very nice exam. I did that as well a few months back. In this case, I did this AZ-103 to renew my initial one. I did the AZ-100, if I'm not mistaken. And now I need to renew after 3 years. You need to renew the certification because all of the content it's based on Azure. And as you can imagine, with the enhancements that Azure have and with the frequency of new features and enhancement features that they have, it's pretty important to just get renew on all your knowledge and make sure that you are up to date with this. Uh,
Exactly. I'm
and
really
those
glad that you were
certifications
talking
is really
about
good.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah,
So
it's you're right, because it's so important how they evolve Azure and everything is changing so quickly that as learners and IT professionals, that we also make that same commitment to stay up to date with that technology.
yeah, completely agree. So tell us, how did you study for this? Do you have any kind of good recipe for our listeners that you have this magic formula that you're doing? Can you tell us? Can you share with us how you did this? Because it was your first Azure certification, right?
This one was. You're absolutely right. So I think you and I have talked about this kind of off record a little bit about sometimes I get some anxieties and I get very excited. I am a passionate guy and I feel strongly about a lot of things. And that's okay. You get the whole package with me. So it's the good with the bad. But one of those things is some anxiety when it comes to testing. And it's why I really thought this opportunity to speak with you about this for everyone else was really important, because if we can reach one person who also feels those same apprehensions, then I'm going to feel really positive about that. So, I just want to communicate to everybody that it's okay to feel that way and you can work through it. I really strongly feel if I can do these certifications, then everybody can do these certifications.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I have a secret recipe to directly answer your question, Marcos, but
Oh, come on.
what I love to do is use all of the resources that are available that I can get my hands on. So I like to read the books that are written by our MVP friends. I like to go to the Microsoft Learn website, and I like to do the practice tests. Now, there's a few other resources that we'll talk about throughout our little conversation here, I imagine, because there's more than just one website that I go to. But I love the fact that Microsoft Learn has really reinvented themselves since 2019, and they've turned into this mix of giving you information and then letting you go hands-on with it. And it's that hands-on labs portion that is absolutely critical for me, because that's where my brain gets to kind of relax a bit. So I know when I can go hands-on, I can get the job done, I can do the work, I can make things go. What I can't always do is get that to work between a Microsoft multiple choice question and the hands-on portion. So that's where I get some of my anxiety from. And I know you've answered so many, I think thousands of questions for me over the years now on these things that I think for us it's a bit of old hat, I guess, if we will. But I think for everybody out there, if it's a new thing, if taking these tests, and certainly as Microsoft works to evolve the tests, then they can become more challenging. The information is always getting updated, so we also have to train on up-to-date training resources. And as an MCT, you know how difficult it is to maintain all of those training materials for guys like me to come in and consume. So
Yeah, that's correct.
How do you keep up to date with all of those things that not only you train others on, but you also train yourself on as well?
It's a very good question. And what I want to share with you is you already start to give a little bit of the what is behind the exam. The exam, it's if you are already familiar with Microsoft certifications and you already did a few exams, and if you didn't did this AZ-103, it's a totally different experience. And I know this because I've been doing several dozens of exams, and this was a very nice experience because right now and now diving into the what is the exam, and I will get a little bit later how I study for this is this exam have a lot of simulation components. And if you are familiar with exams, it used to be very kind of in this case, multi-answer questions that you can choose. But this right now, it's way more interactive, and I love that part because it really allows you to just demonstrate that you really know how to build a VM, for example, how to create a VNet in Azure. And you can use PowerShell, you can use Azure CLI, or you can use the GUI. And the effect that you want to see, or they want to see, I'm assuming, is the end result. So it's really good. The way that I see this, and if you follow us at the on the our YouTube channel, you can see my screen right now, and I'm on web page that is the exam AZ-103, the Microsoft web page, and there is the new version of the AZ-104 coming at the end of March. But if you're going on skills measure and if you're going down, that is on the learning path. There are two ways that you can learn. The online free way, if you are not very familiar with Azure, and you have a bunch of courses that they are completely free. And this is the part that you are talking about regarding Microsoft Learn. They did an awesome job. A
Oh,
lot
it's
of
excellent.
those,
Yeah.
and to be very honest, I'm really proud because a lot of those it's friend of mine's that they are MCTs that they are doing this. A lot of mines are some of my old colleagues at Microsoft that they are doing this as well. And you have a bunch of courses. So from administer infrastructure resources in Azure, 12 modules, for example, architecting storage in Azure, architecting networking, architecting the infrastructure, architecting compute infrastructure in Azure, architecting migrations, business continuity, and disaster recovery in Azure, managing resources, managing identity and access, the Active Directory, and even managing security operations, implementing resource management, security, and administering containers. Those are the few topics that you can have learning paths that will help you a lot. It sounds it's a big exam, my friends and listeners, but it's a very funny one to learn and a very nice one to do it. So it's really impressive how Microsoft is changing this approach. At least for me, I get pumped like you, Andrew, when all of those things changes because some of those old exams, and I apologize if I'm offending someone, they were a little bit boring. This one is exciting because you never know when the next question is going to be the simulator that you can put the hands on, and that's the practice that you want to see. It's not only theoretical knowledge anymore that you need for these kind of exams. What do you
That's right.
think, Andrew?
You're spot on. So this is the kind of knowledge, and through the labs in the exams, it's the validation that the person taking the testing understands how to deliver the work. And I mean, I can't say exactly what Microsoft wants. That's going to be defined in our learning objectives. But it's long been felt that what Microsoft is really after is people that can work in that kind of relational way. So we can learn new things and then we can apply those things. And this is how they're going to validate that. So if you remember in our last podcast that we did for your listeners, on Azure Centric, we were talking about how there's this relationship that's like the symbiotic relationship of the person who learns, the company that hires you as like maybe an MSP or a provider, and Microsoft. And it's good for everybody as we continue to evolve and move forwards. And I think that how we take these tests and how Microsoft is also evolving these tests is a big part of that. So it allows everybody to validate on the newer skills, be it like the newer services rather, being released into Azure, that we as IT professionals have the skills to work with those services, that we can deliver them correctly and professionally for our clients and customers and businesses. And that's important, because we want to make sure that we know what we're doing, first of all, that we configure things correctly, and that they'll be able to upgrade them in the future, and it's a sustainable ecosystem for the business.
Yeah.
It also
Yeah.
makes it sustainable for us as IT professionals, because it means that when we do a good job on these things, hopefully the client would like to have us back again in the future. And it's good for Microsoft because we have a client that's purchasing those services. So,
Yeah.
everybody wins together.
Everyone. And the good thing is, this part that I was showing and I was talking about regarding Microsoft Learn, it's free. So if you are a person that likes to learn by yourself at your pace, right? You can follow this. You have other ways that you can study by buying the manual in this case regarding that specific that specific certification, in this case, the AZ-103, you can find on any place, even digital or physical book to study. That's another way that you can do it. But there is, if you are not those kind of self-dedicating person that you want to do this, you can usually and you can even get what's called the instructor-led courses. So there is a Microsoft official course for this particular exam. So then you have persons like, for example, like me, an MCT, or even like you, Andrew, right? An MCT as well, a recent one. Congratulations, by the
Brand
way,
new. Thank you
a
very
brand
much.
new one, to just deliver these kind of exams or training for you passing your exam. There are lots of things. And if you are following, for example, and if you are attending, not right now with due to this COVID-19 situation worldwide, but if you are going to one of the biggest Microsoft or the bigger Microsoft events, you have like tips and tricks regarding these exams. So I was at Ignite last year, and they had these certification prep exam sessions. So they basically going through the entire content of the exam, and they give you tips and tricks. It's a very nice one for you to attend. And these sessions, I don't know if they are available. Don't quote me on this if they are available on Microsoft Ignite, but you can still see it. And if you are attending those sessions, or in this case, those events. So there is a lot of content out there for you to just pass the exam. And again, it's a very funny exam to write off, and it's really is. I'm so pumped that to just do it again. I have other exams that I need to do it, but this one was a very, very funny way. So regarding Azure and a lot of things that is they are involving, can you tell us a very good tool or a very good way that you can practice in this case, Andrew? Can you share
Yeah,
that with our listeners?
absolutely. So one of the things that I do is I like to have lots of resources. So as you know, I also very closely follow Tim Warner, another very well-known Microsoft trainer. He's quite popular, of course, and he's published a number of GitHub repos and a number of other solution architects, throughout Microsoft certification world have also contributed to all of these. And one place you can find some good links for this is on Azure Citadel. They've got a website. Just, of course, use Bing and search them up because everybody uses Bing.
Bing or your favorite search engine, right?
Absolutely.
I use Google.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So when you find one of these GitHub repos, it gives you a bit of a quick in. You get some ARM templates. You can get into Azure, and it allows you to work through a lot of the content very specifically geared to the learning objectives with the exams. And for AZ-103, it's spot on. So for me, to answer a little bit of your earlier question, what is my secret recipe? I would say multiple resources of hands-on is probably the best secret recipe that you can come up with. You can read about stuff all day long, but when you go out, you do it, you go hands-on, you build the lab, you're creating VMs, you're creating application gateways, load balancers, scale sets. You get in, you do it, you find those little idiosyncrasies like, oh, you know what? If I don't check that box or use this command switch in CLI, boy, does that ever go sideways fast. So you can, you really, for me, there's no better way to learn something than to break the darn thing.
Yeah.
And it's fixing it or completely wiping it out. bless Azure for that ability with the virtualization that they've given to us, especially in our free Azure subscription that we could use to go in and learn. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, how long is the free subscription good for? I remember $200 US. I think
So
it's like
it's $200 for the
6,000
first.
Canadian now.
Almost. Uh, but it's basically $200 for the first month. But there are a lots of service that you can have up to 1 year for free. And for that, it just basically search it for Azure subscription, and then you have a button just say that you can click. In this case, for free, or just subscribe for free, and you can use those credits. But even that, um, I did a few, to be very honest, just to see how it goes. I did one or two of those modules on Microsoft Learn, and they are pretty good. Another thing that I highly recommend is to use the docs.microsoft.com. So the official Microsoft Azure pages, or in this case documentation, there is a lot of good content there, and that you can give you a little bit on insight, but nothing like practice. So where you practice in this case all of that, even if you want to do some kind of labs, there is any special thing that you use, Andrew?
So I use, at that time, I used a free subscription. You can even use a dev test environment if your work or your company already has a subscription in Azure. And that was part of what I did as well. So I have my own, on the business side, my Azure subscription, and I gave myself a little segregated subscription within my tenant to do a bit of practice work on that I needed access to a little bit more than what the free version was giving me. I ran out of time on it, to be perfectly honest with you, and I had to do something, so I moved it into my own. And when I was working in there, I found that at least at the time, in Canadian dollars, pesos, whatever it is, we figured out that it was about $30 for 30 days to do a lot of these labs. And, provided that you shut down the machines, you deprovision everything, and you clean up your resource groups as you go through and do the labs, then there's no problem. And of course, if you're following along and doing the similar things from the Microsoft Docs and targeting those learning objectives, kind of a self-paced learning experience, then you're going to find about the same thing. So even if you're paying a little bit of money, it's quite low. There's no problems in doing that, and it just gives you yet one more way to get hands-on and really explore the Azure technologies. So for me, it gave me a really good opportunity to learn. It let me bring together, I think I used 3 different sources for, GitHubs and different things like that for some templates. And I was quite successful on my exam. I was very pleased about it, because I had a lot of anxiety going into that one. Though I was able to work in Azure on an almost daily basis, for me, it was a lot different going in to write that test, because it's those multi-choice questions. They're so close in the answers sometimes that you really need to exactly know what to do. And I think different people have different ways of learning, and they have different ways of remembering. So for me, the hands-on part is 100% critical.
Yes, I agree 100% with you. Another tool that I use as well is the Azure Citadel. If you're going on azurecitadel.com, you find a lot of good resources there, and you find a lot of the webinars, for example, that you can use it, done by Microsoft, with a lot of those tools and a lot of those labs incorporate it. So you can see it, you can view it, and you can replicate what they are doing on your Azure subscription. And this, I think, is the best way because you are converting two areas. One is the learning, and the other one is the practice. And again, it is essential on this exam that you practice, because if you don't practice this, you will suffer a tremendous fail on your exam, because a lot of those things that happen on the exam is a simulation. So you need to know what you are doing. It's not only the theoretical knowledge. And I think that is one of my best tips. We will go there, but this is the one that I reinforce all the people that they are contact me, say, do you have any good tips for me for passing the AZ-103? And this is the one you need to practice. You need to know what you are doing on Azure, because otherwise, the good old theoretical knowledge, it's not enough to pass the exam. What do you think
That's
about that?
That's spot on. And I think it's a really good way to, from Microsoft's perspective, to help weed out candidates for these exams that are able to memorize a lot of the responses. I think that's something over the years that Microsoft has struggled with a little bit. If we speak honestly about that, that's, when we've talked to businesses over the last 10 years or so, that would probably be their number one complaint. Oh, come on, everybody and their brother has an MCSE, and it hasn't really meant a whole lot for them. And I think Microsoft is doing an awesome job of responding to those business concerns and making sure that their certifications are meaningful and valuable for the candidates.
Yeah, I cannot reinforce that so many times. It's like I've been on clients that they have a lot of certifications, and then we say, okay, now we can have a good conversation, good technical conversation, and then I realize that, but you are a MCSE. How come you are MCSE? And those are, it's what I call the brain dumps MCSE. They memorize the questions, they memorize the answers, they're doing over and over again, and then they went to an exam that is only theoretical, in this case the old-fashioned exams, and bang, they passed the exam. It does, I think it doesn't hurt a little bit other people that really study, they really know, but this exam, the AZ-103, for me it was a breath of air. When I took the exam, I was by surprise, to be very honest, because at that time we were talking, oh, there are some simulations, but I had other exams that they had simulations as well. All time it was based on Flash, and it was not very like this. This is like when you click on the simulation, it opens a Azure subscription and Azure portal. And I say, wow, look at this animation. It's not animation. It's really an Azure subscription that you are connecting to. And you have all the tools there. So you have Azure CLI, you have Azure PowerShell, and you have the Azure portal with the GUI interface that you can use it. Of course, that all the rest, it's locked down, but it's Azure. So you are really having a test on Azure, and that's for me. It just blew my mind when I did the exam. I was so excited when I did the exam, and that for me was like, say, I'm I'm grateful that Microsoft did that jump. It's not an easy one, and I want to see those more exams like this AZ-103 on the other exams as well, because this makes our certification way more value. So right now, seeing an administrator, in this case associate, I know that he really knows Azure because he needs to pass on that. He
That's
needs
right.
to have exactly the same experience. He doesn't have a very good memory of memorizing questions, and I apologize for all of other ones. And I'm one of them as well. So I'm talking against me. Not that I did that, but I know a lot of people that I know a few that did, but I know an awful amount of people that did spend time to study on the old-fashioned exams that they are still certified, but it just diminish the quality of the exam and what Microsoft certification means right now. And I'm really glad that Microsoft did on that direction. But let's stop on this and let's go on the most important part, to just give some of our listeners some of the tips that we can give them, because we already did this exam, we already passed this exam. Right now I have 2 years and something months to do this exam as well again, because it's a 3-year cycle. So what tips can you provide to our listeners, Andrew?
So I think, actually, I just want to briefly correct you, and I'm so sorry. I believe it's a 2-year title for
To
the
you?
Azure certifications.
Good to know.
So you
Thank
may
you.
have less time than you remember,
Oh my,
just in
that's
case
okay.
you're waiting on that one. But I think my number one tip is go hands-on. Don't rush it, but find that balance where you're comfortable. You can measure your skills using the labs from Microsoft Learn, going through the resources from Azure Citadel and GitHub using the templates. Make sure you're comfortable deploying resources and configuring those resources within Azure. That's really important. Also, one of the tips I think that I did want to talk about was, in this age of COVID-19, we all have to stay at home for the most part, but it gives us a bit of an opportunity as well. So we can do a little bit more online learning. Maybe we can talk about how we can test as well. So we can take the exams for Microsoft remotely. And, I've done one exam previously. I did in a testing center for my 103, because I actually enjoy going to one of the testing centers in my hometown here in Calgary. But we can take an exam at home, and there's some rules surrounding it. When you go to the test center, you're in a special environment. There's cameras kind of all around to make sure everybody's staying honest. There's no posters, there's nothing on the tables, there's no writing. And I remember going into the exam a couple years ago. I went in for an Office 365 exam, and you have to pull up your sleeves on your shirt. I had a hoodie on. It was a cool day. I had a hoodie on, and the fellow says, "Yes, you need to lift up your hood, and we need to make sure you don't have papers or tissues or anything like that." And they're quite thorough in checking. So security and making sure everybody's playing fair is very important. So when we do that at home, think of that same kind of clean environment, right? So you may need to sit at the kitchen table instead of in your home office. If your home office is a little bit cluttered, maybe like mine, the proctor for the exam may have some advice for you to find a new room. And then you may end up kind of running to the kitchen with your laptop on battery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't want to be in that spot while you're taking an exam. It's extra stress. It's more to think about. So be prepared for that. Check the website. Look at the requirements for taking the exam when you book it. If you're booking to take your exam online, make sure you understand what that means. So clean room, no posters, nothing within reach. There can't be another voice. So you have to have, if you're in the kitchen, make sure you can close it off. Or, maybe somebody takes the dog for a walk while you're doing your exam, kind of a thing, and make sure that there's no other voices around, because if they hear a voice, they stop your exam.
Exactly.
So there's, we have to make sure everybody plays fair, and we all play by the same rules. That's only fair.
Yeah.
So That would be for me a good tip during our kind of stay at home phase of March 2020 here.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a very
you
good tip. Another
know,
tip that I want to share with everyone is regarding doing the exam is manage your time, because your exam will have a component of answers, uh, multiple choice answers that you need some time. On my exam, for example, and I think the exams are a little bit different from person to person, but at least on my exam, I had that. I had some part of simulations. So don't take too much time to be perfect on everything. Just dominate what is that you dominate. If it's Azure CLI, is Azure CLI. If it's Azure PowerShell, is Azure PowerShell. And if it's the GUI, it's the GUI. Just do it as quickly as you can, but achieve always the good answer. And manage your time, because at the end I was so blown with the simulation that I start to play around, and when I look at the clock and I get scared, I almost had to rush into the entire exam, not entire exam, but the final questions as well. And they are coming as you go. You may have areas that you're doing, for example, some of those simulations that they are good. Then comes again questions, multiple answer questions, and then you're going in a simulation again, and you're doing all of that. It depends on the exam. So there is no formula like you have, for example, you have 10 questions and then doing a simulation, then you have another 10 questions doing another simulation. No. And the simulation, they give you a bunch of things that you need to do it. And following which one of them is following the prerequisites of the previous task. So this is a kind of the tips that I want you to give to everyone that is listening to us. And I think it's just a matter of um, be prepared. And again, if you want some kind of advice, contact us. You have our Twitter. It's at Azure Centric. Our Facebook page as well, and just contact us. And I'm sure that me and Andrew will be available to answer all of your questions. Anything else in this case, Andrew?
Actually, while you were talking, I was just thinking, I looked a couple of days ago and I just checked very briefly here. So at least for right now, Microsoft still has exam replays for sale as well. So it's a little bit more money to purchase the exam replay, but it gives you almost like a feeling of just a try it and it's okay. Don't worry about it so much because
Yeah,
you can try again, right?
exactly.
And that's what I like. So in the
Yeah,
past, I've bought the replays myself because it again, it's one more thing that helps take away some of those anxieties and the pressure with taking a test. And you know, AZ-103 can be a big test for some people. It was an important test for me because it was a validation of working in Azure, and it helped me to move further at a more rapid pace. And I
yeah.
really hope that a lot of other people can do it. And as it changes to 104, it's going to be the same. So I look forward to studying and taking the 104 and you know, the next series as well as they change these to the role based. I think it's going to
Correct.
be fantastic. It really
It
is.
is. I agree with you, and it's nothing only that. It's this Azure Administrator Associate is the base to move on this role certification. So if you want to do the Azure Expert in this case, you need to do this one. On Azure Expert, you need to do a little bit more exams. I think it's if my mistake, if my memory doesn't betray me, it's two more exams to
You're
become
right.
the Azure expert. But this one is the base of everything, and it's a very good one. If you get prepared, you will see that the exam is going to be easy. If you get this practice that Andrew and I are talking about, touching in this case using Azure. If you are using Azure on daily basis, you should not have any problems with this. It doesn't have any special questions regarding this. It does recover all the basics, and I highly recommend you to just search it for the AZ-103 and follow all the things that Microsoft is saying that is covered on the exam. And it's a big exam. Yes, it is. I'm not saying that, but it's a fun one to do it, and it's a
Hmm.
basic. And another tip that I have, I just remember right now, is if you are not familiar with these exams, you can do another exam that is the Azure Fundamentals, the
Oh,
AZ-900. So it's a very entry level exam. I did that exam as well. Not because it doesn't allow me to get any special certification. I just did for fun, and it was a quite well done exam as well. Although it's an entry level one, nothing compares with these Administrator Associates, but it's a really good exam for you at least to have a little bit more experience on these new worlds of Microsoft exams, right? So
exactly.
it's a very I found that sometimes it's helpful to get a little bit more prepared with an interface, how this is going to switch from a multi question, or sorry, a multi answer question, and moving to the lab, and go back to the simulation again, to the questions, and go back to the lab, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah,
So just
absolutely. Yeah, use that 900 exam as a stepping stone. There's, as I'm remembering it, at least there was no simulations or live labs in the 900, but there's a good, like it says, it's Azure fundamentals. So there's a good set of fundamental questions in there. You talk about infrastructure, to billing, to reporting and monitoring. So it's kind of the full spectrum. And now that we kind of talk about this for a minute, I'm thinking it's actually a very good credential for a lot of managers of people who work in Azure to think about,
yeah.
because it can give them a little bit more technical insight into some of the terminology. Because, as technical people, sometimes we talk in acronyms and it can be overwhelming to
Yeah.
somebody who's a little outside that zone, right?
And it's that, and to value the certifications that we're taking, like for example, these AZ-103, because if your manager does the AZ-900s, for example, that is the Azure Fundamentals, and you see that it's not for their realm, it's not that easy, they will value the effort that we have to do it to pass this AZ-103, the Azure Administrator Associate. So it's a very good point, Andrew, a very good one, and I like that. I like that idea. Um, we are reaching the hour over here, not the hour, but we are reaching the time of this special podcast series. Any other recommendation that you want to share with our listeners, Andrew?
I think we should just emphasize the hands-on practice. You know, go through those resources, take a look at Microsoft Docs and compare the exam objectives to Microsoft Docs, and use Azure free subscription or Azure Labs to get in there, and get hands-on in those labs through Microsoft Learn, right? It's a
Yeah,
great opportunity that Microsoft gives us for free to be able to get a credential. I think
agree.
that's really amazing.
So, how can our listeners find you to just if they have any questions?
You can follow me on Twitter at Azure Tracks. You can find my blog also at azuretracks.com. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I have a YouTube channel as well. Everything is all Azure Tracks.
Okay. Thank you. So don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel, the Azure Centric, and follow Azure Centric on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And visit the Azure Centric webpage as well. That is the personal blog of mine. And continuing listen to this podcast. So thank you so much once again, and have a very good night. Bye.
Thank you so much.